or other things like that. And so, uh, but I mean, the fact is, depending on which source you look at,
Mm.
some people will, uh, a lot of people will cite Acroyoga International, right?
Mm.
Or like different organizations that started the movement.
Mm.
And the fact is, they started with the word Acroyoga, right?
Mm.
And so there is some basis in it, at least in the origins. But
Mm.
in any case, it really has expanded, right? And so now you do have many different types, some that have very little to do with actual yoga, right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And so it's one of those things, in my opinion, that if you start talking about that, like, okay, is this acro yoga? Should it be called that? This is one of those discussions that could just go on and on and on forever,
Mm.
depending on who you talk to, right? And so, my approach to it is, I just try to be flexible.
Yeah.
Now personally, I usually call what I do. I usually just call it acro as well. I don't
Mm.
often use acro yoga, but
Mm.
but at the same time, for the group that I am a co-leader of, Sogo Acro Yoga, we do call it Acro
Yeah.
Yoga, and
Yeah.
you know, for us, it's more of a from a practical sort of standpoint,
Yeah.
right?
We gotta
If
call it
you
something.
if people
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if you have people who have never heard of this type of practice,
Mm.
and they see acro yoga, they might have, even if it's very limited, they might have some,
Mm.
uh, you know, uh, image maybe, right,
Totally.
of what that could be.
Mm.
Whereas if you just say acro, to some people, this has no meaning,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, there's different reasons why you would call it that.
Mm.
But it's like, I don't personally make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
Call it acro, call it acro yoga, whatever you want to do.
Mm.
That's fine. Let's
Yeah.
just have fun and enjoy
Just
the
do it.
practice. Yeah, yeah.
Very nice.
So
Very nice. Let's talk about the acro terminology a bit more because that's something I like a lot about it. Please, could you just run us through some of the terms?
sure. What I would usually start with are the what I call the roles. So roles meaning like the jobs, if you want to
Yeah.
think of that way, right? So you
Yeah.
have a base, and I think you mentioned before, but the base is depending on which style you're
Mm.
using or you're
Mm.
doing. But as like a basic acro yoga, the
Mm.
base would be the person who is lying on the ground,
Mm.
and you have a flyer who
Mm.
is the person who is the base is holding up into the air,
Mm.
and then you also have a spotter. The base and the flyer are essentially required to do
Mm.
acro yoga because
Mm.
it is a partner activity.
Mm.
The spotter is an optional role.
Mm.
Depending on all kinds of factors,
Mm.
depending on what the level of the people doing it,
Mm.
depending on the difficulty of the particular pose or movement, um, the conditions, the environment, all kinds of things, right? So that's going to just really depend on
Mm.
the situation, pretty much. So
100%.
base,
Spotter.
flyer, and spotter.
Mm.
Uh,
How about L
the
basing?
when we're
Tell us what L
right,
basing is.
yeah, sure. So again, this is one of those words that if you see a picture,
Yeah.
you can make the connection much more
Mm.
easily.
Mm.
But basically, L basing, think of it, your back is on the ground, your legs are 90 degrees perpendicular from the ground. And so the shape of your body, yeah, right,
Mm. Mm.
it's basically like an L shape,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
your body's here, your feet are here.
Mm.
And so a lot of the, uh, you can think of this as maybe the traditional sort of acro yoga, or uh, sort of one of the large
Yeah.
sort of focuses in
Yeah.
acro and acrobatics, right? L
Mm.
base.
Mm.
So the person is there, and the flyer will be balanced on the person's feet and hands as well,
Mm.
and that's L base. So L base is one big area, very very common one. You might, the way that I typically think of it is you have L base, and then you have, let's say, like counterbalances, which
Mm.
might be something with standing or a lot of different things like that, counterbalance between, two people. You can have standing acro, right? In that case, there is no L base. You're just standing and you're holding someone in the air, right? And within those disciplines, there are even more smaller focuses, such as Icarian. There's certain
what is
like
Icarian?
Yeah, so essentially Icarian is it's the base is usually in a L base sort of shape, and it's where we do different kind of pops, tosses, things like that, where the flyer leaves all points of contact with the base, goes into the air, does something, and then we catch the
Wow.
flyer. So this is a little different than most L basing, where there's usually some point of contact, whether it's the hands or the feet or some combination of those things, right? And so, yeah, Icarian is much more of like an acrobatic type of practice compared to what you might call, L basing or like Acroyoga, right? So certainly there's going to be a lot of people who say, Icarian is not really Acroyoga. But again, that's going back into that whole thing. What is Acroyoga? Does this count or not? Which is an endless debate, probably. So,
Totally.
But yeah, hopefully that you could get the idea from that.
Stunning, stunning. So maybe this video is like a sales pitch for for
Yeah.
Acroyoga. I like it all, and we can later on we can also discuss for somebody hoping to get started in this world of acro yoga. We'll really go into detail about the feelings and the strength and the challenge of doing it all. But when did you first start acro? Maybe first, where did you first see it, and then why did you decide to jump in?
Right. So I honestly I don't know the exact year, but I've been doing acro for about 5 years,
Mm,
maybe a little bit more. Um, and how did I first see it? Well, I had never seen, heard of acro yoga at all
mm,
until just one day where I saw a picture of it on Facebook. And this was a friend of uh, sort of a friend of mine at the time. And by seeing that, also one of my other good friends, which was Simon, you mentioned him
mm,
earlier, he also discovered this at the same, similar time.
mm, mm,
And it was as simple as him inviting me to this sort of acroyoga practice or sort of casual lesson. And, I was all about it because
mm,
I saw the picture and I said, this looks so much fun, right?
mm, mm,
And, around that time, well, for a long time, pretty much my whole life, I would say I've been very active. And
mm,
not just in one particular sport, but in many different things. And especially at that time, I was also, let's say, dabbling in
mm,
handstands and different things like that. And so I saw this and I'm like, wow, I got to try this. And, I really appreciate Simon for finding that jam practice that we went to, because that was the first experience I had. Right. And
mm.
so that was in Tokyo. I never saw acro yoga or anything where I grew up in the States. This is my first experience seeing it in Tokyo. And so we went there.